Well, here we stand Tuesday, a week after last week's podcast, and a name that was not mentioned pretty much at all has committed after a big recruiting weekend in Colton Vasek, the edge rusher out of Westlake High School in Austin, Texas, a guy that comes from Texas bloodlines. His dad played for the Longhorns back in the 90s, and yet here we stand. I don't think he was in on anybody's radar, but he's committed to the Sooners.
It's amazing, guys. Just the smoke coming out of last weekend's visits is really unbelievable. We haven't recruited. Well, if everything falls in line, the dominoes continue, and the people who we expect to commit to the Sooners commit to the Sooners. I mean, we haven't recruited defensively like this since. I honestly don't know if I could tell you. I wasn't following recruiting at that time, whenever the year was. I can tell you that. So it's remarkable what's going down, and there was not everything we had heard about Colton Vasek is that kind of conversations had split. Two parties were going separate ways for no negative reason. And all of a sudden he gets around Venables and Chavis and company and commits on the spot. Basically, it's pretty amazing what these guys did last weekend.
Yeah, for the longest time, it kind of felt like it was down to Texas and Oregon for this kid. And he wasn't even on the visitors list to show up to a party at the Palace over the weekend. And lo and behold, he shows up on a Friday. And next thing you know, social media is kind of going crazy on a Sunday that this kid, not only did he show up, not only did he have a good time, but there's a chance that he might have actually committed. And then lo and behold, yesterday at 3 p.m., he does decide to pull the trigger and become I believe it was the 10th commitment in the last 5 weeks for Brent Venables in this chosen 2023 class. So, no, you hit the nail on the head, Adam. I mean, the fact that this staff was able to go into Austin to take on a Rivals 100 kid, or a kid that's going to end up being a Rivals 100 kid, out of Austin, coming from a family where the dad played at Texas. He coaches high school football just a few miles from the University of Texas campus. Fantastic job by Miguel Chavis, Brent Venables. I know it's a complete team effort. Todd Bates as well. But I think that's the cherry on the top of what this staff has been able to do over the last 5 to 6 weeks. And I can't wait to see where it's going to go from here.
Yeah, not only were all odds against OU in this race, it's just amazing what they were able to pull out here. It's amazing that this kid that has every single reason in the world to go to Texas, and yet he just can't say no to Miguel Chavis. He can't say no to Brent Venables, and he can't say no to what's being built here in Norman, which I think is pretty exciting. And, OU fans have a lot to be excited about. It's not just that, the odds were against us here in this particular race, but Colton Vasek is a really good player. Like, if you look at his film, I've kind of been on record as saying this, especially with like your offensive players. Every single highlight on those films is usually, a long touchdown. They're running zigzagging all over the field because they're in high school and they're fashioning everybody. Colton Vasek he kind of stands out in my opinion as far as what his film is. He's so long. His closing speed is like that. You see so many times where quarterbacks think they have time to maybe get out of his way and they just don't have it. So he's one that makes me pretty excited for what he could bring to the Sooners defense as they improve quickly.
Yeah, it's almost like you can tell that his coach, and by his coach I mean his dad, played that position at a high level. So like you said, Adam, when you turn on the tape and you see, not just a high motor with this kid, you see the athleticism, you see the long frame, 6'4", 225 pounds, but you see the technique. And you see that the moves that he has, in pass rush coming off of the ball. So I think that this is a kid, many experts have kind of predicted that this guy has the frame to be able to add maybe another 30 to 40 pounds. So if you're Jerry Schmidt, you see this kid coming in, next season, ultimately if Oklahoma ends up signing this guy, you're licking your chops at the possibility of what this kid can become, during his 3 to 4 years in Norman. Fantastic pickup by this staff. And that kind of leads us to the next one, Adam. Another big boy up front that OU was able to get their hands on.
Yeah, Derek LeBlanc committed last Thursday and almost completely got forgotten about because of the recruiting weekend that OU had. There's a lot of guys that I think people think are silently committed, but Derek LeBlanc in his own right, another 4-star, another highly ranked guy among many services out there committed to OU from the Orlando area. So there's OU going into another territory where we don't typically get, especially defensive guys, but pulling a guy that's pretty highly ranked out there. As far as like my opinion of him, and I'm no expert evaluator by any means, I could be completely wrong here. To me, he looks like a guy that slides more into that defensive tackle position, maybe more like a Jalen Redmond type of role. He seems a little slower, but a lot of people love his film. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, kind of very similar to Vasek in terms of, he plays with the high motors, great with his hands, plays a little high. Just watching his huddle tape, that's technique work. Todd Bates is going to be able to correct early and often. But guys, these are the kind of players that Oklahoma is going to have up front as they make the transition into the SEC. With the old staff, this is kind of the craziest part about this entire thing. With the old staff, just hit the rewind button, go all the way back to a year ago. There's no chance in hell OU would have been a player in this guy's recruitment. So that's the biggest difference to me with this new staff. Venables, Bates, Chavis, who has turned out to be an absolute rock star. We could probably spend an entire segment talking about the Miguel Chavis effect during his time, the short 8 months here in Norman. They can go into a living room in America and put us into contention with any elite defensive prospect. And Derek LeBlanc becoming a part of this class is just more proof of that.
Yeah, it's really showing the Clemson roots of the defensive side, especially the staff here in Norman. They were recruiting these areas previously. The roots down into Florida and down in the Southeast was heavy Clemson ground. They were competing for these recruits just like any SEC team would. So we're starting to see that pay off. And as you mentioned, Tyler, as we head into the SEC, that can only prove vital that there's already roots sank in the Southeastern Conference states. So good things to come, hopefully down the stretch.
Yeah, speaking of Clemson, they're basically neck and neck with OU in pretty much every rankings that you look at. It's usually like 6 Clemson, 7 OU, or vice versa, which I just think is interesting. That wasn't something we had on our agenda. I don't know if we want to get into it necessarily, but everyone flinging mud at Brent Venables at this point, saying, "Oh, he has a different, strategy around. Oh, when you're committed, you're not taking visits." And it's like, well, yeah, but it's working. OU and Clemson both in the top 10. You can doubt that, but. Like
it's kind of funny the timing of all that. That quote that went viral over the weekend. Shout out Unnecessary Roughness for getting that thing going. But that was a quote all the way back from the month of March or late March, early April. So it's no coincidence that OU's having the biggest recruiting weekend of the year and something like that surfaces. So
and
almost feels like
the
USC hit piece.
Yeah, all the accusations that have come out recently because suddenly OU's surging in recruiting. So haters want to hate and basically sling mud essentially, and I guess that means you're doing the right thing. So